Is there any discussion on this within the Commission? What about the Court of Human Rights? Do you have any comments on that situation? I don't have any specific comments on the exchange of correspondence, which I think you're referring to, between the Commissioner on Human Rights and the Maltese authorities and the Committee on Human Rights within the Council of Europe. And when it comes to our particular policy, well, really there's no change there. We do everything that we can, both in legal and practical terms, to help to resolve that situation which is occurring in the Mediterranean at this moment in time and which is so difficult. We're all aware of the difficulties created by the coronavirus pandemic for the authorities in countries such as Malta and Italy. In the meanwhile, we do still expect Member States to fulfil all of their obligations under international law and European law. And when it comes to rescue at sea, as you were saying, that is part of those obligations under international law. And then when it comes to European law, we have also adopted guidelines which indicate how that should be implemented in practice. So close cooperation with Frontex to come up with a solution to that complex situation which is ongoing. I can also remind you that there is a breadth of different possibilities for provision of support from Europe to the Member States, corresponding to different areas of need. So operational support, financial support, which can be mobilised very quickly at the request of a Member State. And we are always ready and willing to coordinate efforts for localisation, if necessary. Can I have a follow-up question? Yes, of course. The Commission, then. Is the Commission considering taking action from a legal standpoint in situations where a government, such as the Maltese government, actually is practising refoulement, is sending people back, which is currently happening? You've talked about European and international obligations, so you've talked about willingness to assist. OK, but I'd like to know whether you're also willing to penalise these increasingly flagrant infringements being carried out by certain governments, and in this specific case, Malta. David. We have discussed this point several times already here in our press room. I think we have to make a distinction between what falls under European law and what falls under international law. The European Commission retains its prerogatives, of course, where European law applies or where the responsibilities of Member States under European law apply. The Commission cannot take legal action where that is not the case, where, in fact, international law is what applies. Now, of course, the Commission is always willing to make use of its prerogatives there as the guardian of the treaties to fully exercise that role, but I don't have any specific comments on this case at this moment. Well, just to be very specific, if I may, the Commissioner for Human Rights of the European Council has said explicitly that the Maltese government must not give instructions to these private vessels to embark individuals who have been rescued from Libya. So that's in fact resulting in a situation of refoulement which would be considered to be illegal under European law, which is why I'm asking you whether there is an intention to act or simply to continue to make appeals, in theory, if I can put it that way, appealing to the goodwill of all individuals. I don't have any specific announcements on any specific action which the European Commission may or may not be about to take. All I can do is to call to mind that refoulement is illegal in line with European law. And of course, it also goes without saying that the European Commission can only take action where European law applies. Now, some of the matters that you've raised here relate to rescue operations at sea, which are activities taking place in international waters. And as a result, the matter of implementation of European law, well, that's quite a different scenario. The European Council does not necessarily operate under the same judicial and legal constraints as we do. and that Commissioner might well be able to take action on situations other than those which we can as the European Commission from the legal perspective. Thank you. Are there any further questions for Adalbert while we have him with us up here at the podium? Thomas? No? Lorenzo, do you have a question for Adalbert?
Tu as la parole, Lorenzo.
You have the floor.
Je voulais insister sur la question.
The sound isn't very good, Lorenzo. You're going to have to speak up a bit. Yes, I wanted to talk about refoulement at sea. Adalbert said quite clearly that it is it's not in line with EU legislation. There might be people who might have a right to claim asylum, and the requests would have to be looked at on an individual case-by-case basis. The refoulement is not allowed. So, Adalbert, my question is, are we talking about rescue and at sea? We're not. We're talking about instructions issued by an EU government to engage in refoulement. And how can you say that the European Commission has nothing to say about that? Lorenzo, unfortunately, I am not at liberty to engage in a legal analysis of such complex issues here in the press room. All I can say is that from a strictly legally speaking point of view, the European Treaty, European law, have a certain scope to do, in terms of substance and the territory where it applies. So European law is not illimited in scope. It can't say that refoulement is something to be completely rejected in all actions and every action that the member state engages in, only in the areas where there is a scope for action from the point of EU law. So this is something that I wanted to raise in the sense that we can only act in the areas of scope of EU law and not all other imaginable situations. That having been said, non-refoulement is a principle, it's a principle of international humanitarian law. It's something that pertains to obligations that member states and states have to abide by, be that derived from international law or from an EU law perspective. All right, thank you very much. I don't think Adalbert can go any further than that today. Griselda, I see that you've raised a question. Is it for Adalbert?
I'm not understanding this exception being made here. I don't understand how you can say that refoulement is illegal, but at the same time the Commission cannot apply this law. Sorry about that, I just haven't understood that. Could you be a bit more specific? You're saying that this is action which is under the law of the seas, and for that reason the Commission cannot open any proceedings. Is that what you're saying? I simply don't grasp it, sorry. Yes, not to worry, Griselda. What I'm saying, I'm talking about the way in which the legal system is organised within the European Commission, the European Union. The European Commission only has a legal prerogative for European law, and where European law does not apply, the European Commission cannot take any action. European law prohibits refoulement, as do certain other instruments within international law. So where European law applies, the Commission can act. Where European law does not apply, typically that would be, for example, issues under rescue at sea, the European Commission does not have a judicial prerogative to take action. Yes, sorry, but what I don't understand here is that Malta is, in fact, carrying out refoulement. Now, is that action being taken by the Maltese government part of the competency of the European Commission or not? Well, first of all, I cannot comment on this idea that Malta is or is not guilty of refoulement. I don't have all the information available to me to see whether that is indeed or is not the case. Having said that, action taken by a member state can either be taken within the framework of European law or indeed outside of that framework. For example, if a member state is engaged in a rescue operation at sea, then typically speaking that is something that is outside the scope of application of European law. Now, going above and beyond that, I'm not really in a position to give you a detailed legal analysis of that complex situation. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.